Here it comes. And Elizabeth is on her way back right now. Okay, well, good evening once again. Heart Sutra, part 3. So, we spent a lot of time last week talking about form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And we're going to recap on some of that. Not so much to recap, but to set the stage for where we're going today. We're going to move into the lists bit today, the no form, no feeling, no perception, no eye, no ear. And that, I think, makes an awful lot more sense, is a lot clearer if we're really grounded on the first part of this. So we started with Avalokiteshvara and Shariputra Avalokiteshvara, coming at this from the perspective of compassion, helping everybody realize freedom. And he made the statements, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. And this is a commentary on Heart Sutra by the Dalai Lama. He talks about the fourfold approach to understanding emptiness out of Tibetan Buddhism, which I think is just a useful frame for looking at this. So, appearance is established as empty. Form is emptiness. Appearance is established as empty. Emptiness is affirmed as dependent origination. Emptiness is form. Emptiness and appearance are affirmed as a unity, and this unity is affirmed as transcending all linguistic expression and conceptual thought. Doesn't match up one for one, but they kind of get us where we're going. Emptiness and appearance are affirmed as a unity, and this unity is affirmed as transcending all linguistic expression and conceptual thought. So this also lines up with another, I mean, there's lots of different frames of references, and I'm going to dance around between a few of them, because looking at different ways of seeing this, I think, is helpful. So another way of looking at this is Vasubandhu was somebody who grew up in the Abhidharma and the old tradition, and he moved into the new philosophy of the time. And he wrote a treatise on the three natures, which Ben Connolly, some of you may have attended, or his retreat earlier, well, I guess late last year, or read his book on the subject. But Vasubandhu's three natures are the imaginary nature. Everything we see is imaginary. This bell is imaginary, and form is emptiness. We get stuck when we get stuck on the imaginary nature. We take that as real. That's a problem. But it's imaginary, aka it's empty. The second nature is independent arising. We can't escape. Emptiness is form. It's all me. I am responsible in that sense for at least partially responsible. I'm involved in everything. No way out of this. And then the third of Vasubandhu's natures is the fully realized nature, which is things as it is, as Thich Nhat Hanh would call it. Another one you're probably familiar with is the three marks of existence. Traditionally, in the Theravadan perspective, they are impermanence, suffering, and non-self. That was expanded to include a fourth, nirvana, and in a lot of the Mahayana traditions, that's collapsed to the last three of those. So we have suffering, non-self, and nirvana as the marks. So suffering, we suffer when we get stuck on the bell. Same thing. Suffering is taking as real that which is not real. Suffering is the gap between the way things are and the way we want them to be. Non-self. This is the independent nature of stuff. This is emptiness is form. This is within that suffering, there is nothing worthy of being taken as a self, as a permanent self. Nirvana is the third mark, quiescence. Things as it is. So what's going on here is existence is not actually being challenged. What is being challenged is the mode of existence. It's how we perceive existence. Emptiness is not nothing. Emptiness is not the absence, a complete void. Emptiness actually is the fabric. It is the flesh out of which form is made. So it's a way of seeing, as we talked about last time. It's a way of practice. It's easy, and a lot of times we think in our practice of being in a state of ignorance and wanting to wake up from the state of ignorance, like we don't know and then we want to know. That's not quite right. It's not that we don't know, we know incorrectly. So we have an incorrect mode of experiencing. So this is all about jolting us out of that incorrect mode of knowing into the correct mode, which actually is more like not knowing, truly not knowing. So I'm going to jump to my next text. This actually is the Muladhyamika Karika by Nagarjuna, which means Fundamental Treatise of the Middle Way, which was, in many ways of thinking, this is the origin. Actually, no, I'm not going to go there first. I'm going to go to here first, because we're going to get back to the Sutra, and I'm going to read out of the Sutra just the next section. So we've got form itself is emptiness, emptiness itself form. Sensations, perceptions, formations, and consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure, neither increase nor decrease. That list is a list of what are called, in some traditions, the three doors. They are the emptiness of stuff. So that's the thing in itself is not what we think it is. It says, all dharmas are marked by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure. This is to do with causation. So when we get into the list, we're going to have the 12 list of causation. This is to do with causation. This is signlessness. Stuff has no sign, no mark. And the third on this list is neither increase nor decrease, which is the outcome, the effect. It's called aimlessness or wishlessness. So these are all talking about the same cloud nature of stuff. In the introduction to this treatise, which, as I was going to say, in many ways of thinking, this is a philosopher, the second Buddha, starting a new way of thinking. This author, who I find persuasive in his way of thinking, feels right, argues more that this is correcting some errors that were creeping into interpretations of the Theravadan tradition, and it's really returning this. So this is a book in many ways that to me unites all the traditions rather than branches off and creates new ones. But the introduction here, not the introduction, his preface, dedicatory verse, reads as follows. I salute him, the fully enlightened, the best of speakers, who preached the non-ceasing and the non-arising, the non-annihilation and the non-permanence, the non-identity and the non-difference, the non-appearance and the non-disappearance, the dependent arising, the appeasement of obsessions, and the auspicious. So it's not quite the same list, but it's a list that points in exactly the same direction. There's nowhere to land here. Just flat out nowhere to land. There's no form to land on as a form. There's no emptiness to land on as emptiness. I read the list again because it's intended to create this sense of groundlessness, of the only place to be is not knowing. I salute him, the fully enlightened, the best of speakers, who preached the non-ceasing and the non-arising, the non-annihilation and the non-permanence, the non-identity and the non-difference, the non-appearance and the non-disappearance, the dependent arising, the appeasement of obsessions, and the auspicious. I will read one more time the equivalent section out of the Heart Sutra. All dharmas are marked by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure, neither increase nor decrease, nowhere to land. I also brought this along. I will not read it because it's a similar list, but it shows up all over the place. You'll remember the Sutra Vimalakirti, which was the householder where Shariputra went to visit. In the story, Vimalakirti makes him look a bit of adult, but he makes everybody look adult. And then Shariputra meets the princess who spins around and awakens. And that story continues with the princess going through a longer lecture, about a page long in that text, of a similar list. And it's not the same, but it's similar, and it's getting at exactly the same place, which is groundlessness. I'll go back to this book one more time, which is to read the Kaccayana Sutta. The Kaccayana Sutta is out of the Pali Canon. I think it's actually in the Samyutta Nikaya, but it's out of the Pali Canon. And he makes the argument that that's the source of all of this. And I'll just read you an extract, because this again takes us to the same place. And this is one of, to me, it's only a page long. And it's one of the most profound texts in the whole of that canon to me. So, missing off the introductory paragraph with the thus I have heard, this world, Kaccayana, is generally inclined to two views: existence and non-existence. To him who perceives with right wisdom the uprising of the world as it has come to be, the notion of non-existence in the world does not occur. Kaccayana, to him who perceives with right wisdom the ceasing of the world as it has come to be, the notion of existence in the world does not occur. I'll read that paragraph again because it's dense. It's just a few words, but it's dense. To him who perceives with right wisdom the uprising of the world as it has come to be, the notion of non-existence in the world does not occur. So you can't say it doesn't exist. To him who perceives with right wisdom the ceasing of the world as it has come to be, the notion of existence in the world does not occur. You can't say it exists. Everything exists. This Kaccayana is one extreme. Everything does not exist. This Kaccayana is the second extreme. Kaccayana, without approaching either extreme, the Tathagata teaches you a doctrine by the middle. That's the middle way. And it is having nowhere to land. Can't say it exists, can't say it doesn't exist. So with that, we are going to run through the lists. The lists are actually really pretty straightforward when you get to it. So, therefore, given emptiness, there is no form, no sensation, no perception, no formation, and no consciousness. The five aggregates. If you go back and figure out where those came from, Buddha didn't describe five fundamental constituents of existence. What he described was, this isn't what you think it is. There's this heap of amorphous stuff. In actual fact, there's not even a heap. There's 5 heaps. Let's just make it difficult, make it clear. There's nothing there. So this was simply a way of describing emptiness. But it's a way of describing emptiness without being nihilistic. It's a way of deconstructing and saying, it's not what you think it is. There's actually nothing here. There's just this heap of stuff. The 5 aggregates. So, of course they're empty. They're designed to be empty. But if we start reifying them, just like we say emptiness is real, we get in trouble. So a way of reading this is it's simply saying emptiness is also empty, which, as it happens, is what this treatise is all about. Emptiness is also not something we can hold on to. The 5 aggregates are no less than a way of describing emptiness, describing non-existence. And you can't say non-existence is there either. As a sidebar to go back to where we started this all, Shariputra is the student, if you will, in this, for many reasons. And a reason is probably that this is lobbied particularly in the direction of the Sarasthavadins, which is a sect of Buddhism that arose around this time, a little before this, sort of around the time of the birth of Christ, sort of 2,000 years ago, where it was becoming more focused on lists and reifying some of the lists. So there was an intentional pointing at dismantling the lists. But there is this deeper teaching in here, which is this is already emptiness. The aggregates are already emptiness. So we go on to the next part of the list. No eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of sight, no realm of mind consciousness. Those are the 6 sense gates, the 6 ways that one experiences the world, the 6 objects, which are what one experiences in the world. One is lined with each of those sense gates, and the 6 consciousnesses, which are the 18 realms of consciousness. So this is a way of, it's just another way of deconstructing reality, of saying, this is what the world is, right? And again, it's not saying in concrete terms, there's this I and there's this thing. It's looking at how it's not what we think it is. Consciousness is just what arises when subject and object arise. The 3 come together and the 3 go together. So of course they're empty too. Because that's what they're describing. And consistent with what we were talking about before, the way of experiencing reality, you can't say an I exists and you can't say it doesn't exist. Going on down the list, there is neither ignorance nor extinction of ignorance, neither old age and death nor extinction of old age and death. We'll stop with that one. So that's a truncated version of the 12 dependent links of causation. Ignorance, intention, 5 sense gates, senses, contact, clinging, craving, etc. And the idea is this is a way that reality is constructed. And so he's saying there is no 12-link chain of causation. If you go back to one of the pieces we read earlier, all dharmas are marked by emptiness, they neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure. That is precisely one, I talked in there about part of that list is to do with causation and part of it is to do with effect. There's no cause and there's no effect. So the 12-link chain of causation can't be real. It can't be real. It is a description, it is a useful description, but it's not real. And it's implicit within the 12-link chain of causation that it's not real as well, because the second half of the 12-link chain, he actually talks about it in this same Kaccayana Sutta. Thus arises the mass of suffering, as at the end when we get to sickness, old age, and death. However, from the utter fading away and ceasing of ignorance, there is a ceasing of dispositions. From the ceasing of dispositions, there is a ceasing of consciousness. From the ceasing of consciousness, there is a ceasing of the psychological personality. From the ceasing of the psychophysical personality, there's a ceasing of the six senses, contact, clinging, craving, etc., etc., etc. And thus there is a ceasing of this entire mass of suffering. So when understood properly on its own terms, the 12-link chain of causation self-liberates. It does not exist by its own terms. So of course it's not real. Of course it's empty. So again, if you bring all these back to just that foundational point, really understanding we can't land on existence and we can't land on emptiness, and that's all this is saying, all the way through. Can't land on existence, can't land on emptiness, and true realized nature is that middle way. These are of course all empty. The last one, no cessation, no path, no knowledge, and no attainment, which is just the Four Noble Truths. And again, those are a useful expedient for us. They're a useful way of looking at things. But we just talked about no cause. If there's no thing, how can there be a cause? Suffering is what happens when we get stuck in the imaginary. The bell or whatever it is, right? So it takes us to the same place. I am going to finish with something out of the Atthakavagga, which is another text. It's actually out of the Sutta Nipata, which is the old Pali canon. And it's about no views. So I'll just read 8 short verses, maybe a couple of quick comments, and then we'll finish. Having views about what is ultimate, a person makes these the best in the world and calls all other views inferior. As such, they have not gone beyond quarreling. Seeing benefit in the self, or in things seen, heard, and thought, or in precepts and religious practices, and then grasping at this, a person then sees all else as inferior. What one relies on in order to see all else as inferior is an entanglement, say those who are skilled. Monastics should therefore not depend on things seen, heard, or thought, or on virtue and religious observances. Nor should they make up views in the world by means of knowledge, precepts, and religious observances. Nor would they think of themselves inferior or superior to others, and they shouldn't take themselves as equal. Letting go of what is taken up, the person is free of grasping, doesn't depend on knowledge, or take sides when factions disagree, or fall back on any kind of view. One not inclined to either side, to becoming or non-becoming, to here or the next world, there exists nothing to get entrenched in when considering the doctrines others grasp. Here one does not conceive the slightest concept in regard to what is seen, heard, or thought. How in this world could one categorize the Brahman who does not take hold of views? One does not construct, prefer, or take up any doctrine. A true Brahman, not led by precepts or religious practices, who has gone beyond, does not fall back on belief, is one who is thus. So it's all, this is a very compact, this, the Heart Sutra, it's a very compact description of this not landing. There is no place to land. It's not existence and it's not non-existence. All views are flawed views. And it's by letting go of views that we can free ourselves. And that's what Avalokiteshvara, out of his boundless compassion, is trying to teach us.